membership meeting to order. We're going to start first with going around the room with introductions. If you could just say who you are and what company you're with. We will start with that.
So here? So
yeah.
I'm Paul Jackson. I'm independent social media, and the company's called RaePop.
Ray Bradley, I'm associated with Videography.
My name is Gidget Shepherd, and I'm in the Human Resources field.
Tony Warren, Warren's News and Gift.
Kathy Garcia, I'm with the City of Seattle, representing movie firms.
Saying it and just really couldn't pull it together. And what I said to the board, I said, what's frustrating with me is the last month of the year and throughout, I've been kind of like not attending church as frequent. And I said, normally my taglines come when I'm sitting in church. And the pastor would say something and I go, that's it. That's going to be the tagline. That's it. That's going to be the tagline. But between my travels and being sick and other things, during the month of December and stuff, I just really hadn't been going to church as frequent. And I was sitting there because people that know me know that I really respect my faith. And I'm going, it's like nothing is really connecting. It's good, it's what we want to say, but since I didn't hear it from the man up above, it's not connecting. So I was sitting there ready to I sent a text, I think, to Henry. I said, Henry, what did we settle on for a tagline at the board meeting? Because I need to announce what the tagline is. And before he could send the text back to me, I opened up my emails, and there was an email from Joel Osteen. And the subject was, there's power in unity. And I went, thank you, God. You knew I was struggling with this. And so when you see the message and the quote and things, that really, and I was on the phone with Brian. I think it was Brian I was on the phone with, and I said, Brian, I've been really struggling with this. And as I was talking to him is when the email came through. And then I started reading the scripture here. We need to come together in the unity of faith. There's power in unity. When we are critical and judgmental, we build walls that separate us. And let's decide to lay down our differences and come together in unity. In 2018, Brian said, that's it. And before I even had a chance to second guess it or anything, I shot it out, Tabor's new 2018 tagline. So that's how we came up with the tagline. And I'm really pleased with all of the different things in Googling this tagline and quotes and scriptures and different things that I'm seeing pertaining to this tagline. So I'm looking forward in 2018 for us all coming together in unity. We have some really exciting things to talk about that occurred yesterday. As you all saw the emails, we were down testifying about repealing I-200. Sarah, our lobbyist, who's done a great job all year of pulling together and working with Nate, the events that occurred. We're going to talk more about that. And it just dawned on me, I didn't even introduce the board. We didn't do the introduction of the board because we have some new board members. We also, since Edson accepted his role in the mayor's office at the city, in talking to the ethnic, he's had to step off of the Tabor board. So we now have, and we thought we had a full board, we now, once again, have an open board position that Edson had to step out of. So we are definitely going to be looking for a new chair and board member for economic development. So I will be reaching out to some of you. Lynn, I was liking some of the things that you just discussed, that you were involved in. And if any of the board members can tell you that sitting up here, it's like when I hear something that connect, next thing you know, you see them sitting on the board. Real can attest. Every board member can attest to how, in talking to them in general about something else, I go, you know what? You would be great in this role, or you would be great in that role. So I'm calling you out in front of everybody. With that being said, I'm going to let the board introduce themselves and what chair, what committee they're over.
I'm
I'm Christina Van Middlesworth. I represent membership. I'm also with the Business Diversity Program at the University of Washington.
Hi, Real Johnson, Government Affairs Chair. Just my first meeting, it's an honor. Thank you all and for accepting me. And got some exciting news about what happened with I-200 yesterday.
Henry Yates, and by the way, I was not in the least bit offended that Alden did not call on the board to introduce itself. I was not in the least bit offended by that.
Okay.
Anyway, Henry Yates, Chair of the Public Affairs Committee for Tabor 100.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Washington, and no big changes for me. I'm still gainfully unemployed and semi-retired. I'm your education chair.
Abdul Yusuf from Fund Development Chair. I'm also the General Manager of Eastside for Hire, Tennessee Committee in Seattle.
And I'm Andrea Jackson, I'm the Tabor 100 Treasurer, and I also work for Horizon Air and Alaska Air Group. And I was obviously negligent in completing my duties of introducing the board. So, my apologies, Henry.
Thank you all. Well, that being said, we're gonna go right into the treasurer report.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. And as we take a look at wrapping up 2017, we have a total of $331,000, $331,890 in all of Tabor's accounts. This includes $31,729 in our scholarship accounts. That's the Space Needle and Levi Fund account, the Space Needle Scholarship account, and our Key Bank, which is the William Bradford Scholarship Fund. So as Kevin, I don't know where you are this yet on the 2018 scholarships, but I'm sure that your group has been working fine on those. As far as dues and renewals, for December we had contributions and renewal dues in the amount of $865. And as we wrap up 2017 and we looked at all of the activity preparing for a strong 2018, our operating expenses were a little up over normal at $17,000, but that, as you can see with the testimony down with I-200 and the work that Sarah's been doing, we felt that those dollars were well spent, and thank the board for investing in that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and we can talk afterwards if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for those of you that are new and came in after we brought Sarah on, we are actually paying a lobbyist to represent us down in Olympia, and it has been very successful. We would talk more about that. And we started out with saying we need donations to keep this going and paying her every month. Eastside for her, I think, made a nice contribution to get us going last year. And there were some others that donated toward the fund of funding this. But Tabor has pretty much been carrying it out of its operating expenses. So I'm hoping when you guys see the value of what we've been doing and how well spent the money is, that we start contributing to the fund of keeping this lobbyist going in Olympia. Government affairs, did you have anything to report, or you want to wait for it till we get on tomorrow's stuff? It's up to you. I mean, on yesterday's stuff. Okay. Henry, you have anything to report?
People should tell me if they want to be highlighted in this.
Okay. One of the things that we're trying to do this year is to highlight all of our members in a different member in each newsletter. Henry is the public affairs chair, and if you guys, anyone who wants to be highlighted and recognized in our newsletter, contact Henry. This newsletter get emailed out and circulated over and over and over, so it's really great recognition to have you highlighted, especially if you're new in business and things, but Henry is who you would contact, our public affairs chair, for that. Kevin? Kevin, I always have something.
Good morning, everyone. The Education Committee has, as usual, a pretty full slate of work for 2018. We have several projects, and in addition to those, we manage 5 scholarship programs. This is the time of year when we start to get active on figuring out how much money we have for scholarships, and working with our partners on scholarships. Some of the scholarships are open, other scholarships are in conjunction with, say, University of Washington or Seattle University, and we also have a really good relationship with Renton Technical College for our culinary scholarships. In any case, there may be some opportunities for some of you to be engaged in assisting us with developing candidate pools for some of those scholarships and are interviewing students. Annually in April or early May, there is a group of Tabor members and others who interview students for a YMCA scholarship that we also help support as we get students through a YMCA program at Garfield High School. So we'll be looking and listening for some of those pieces of work coming up in the next couple of months. My hope is that we'll have all of our scholarship students settled in and selected by around the end of July, first week of August, so that we can present 5 or 6 students who live here in the area to those attendees who go to the gala, which usually takes place in September. So if you have any questions, we'll be updating our information on the website. If you'd like to be engaged or involved in any of the selection processes, just give me a call or send me an email at education@tabor100.org.
Thank you. Abdul, do you have anything? Okay. Membership?
So I actually don't have a lot to report. I just want to say good morning and let you know that we are Tabor. One of the things that Ollie and I talked about is really just kind of being more intentional around membership, and that means that I need your help. So I'm going to be reaching out to you, so this is a precursor to that, to let you, just to talk to you about how you see the value of your membership, what that means to you, and also how can we make that membership, that value even better. So.
And you're gonna need members for your membership committee to help you say and give us ideas and things that you think as a member that you feel like when joining Tabor would have been helpful for you. We used to have a membership book that told all about Tabor, how Tabor got going, but it talked about the different committees, so you can select what committee you want to be on. One of the things when people ask me, what is the value, if I join Tabor, what's the value? And then I say, well, it all depends on what you put in. You get out what you put in, but you can help us. And anyone, just sitting in this room, the networking alone at a Saturday meeting is valuable. But we have to really get engaged and get involved in order for you to feel the value of being a member of Tabor 100. One of the things I was really proud of was to see how many drove down to Olympia yesterday. And if you saw the news clipping, I think it was on Cairo 7, they scanned the room. I saw Henry's face, I saw Koss' face, I saw Edson's face. But to just see that we were there representing something that this organization was founded on, I-200, and to try to get I-200 repealed. So it was really exciting to see the people that made the drive down yesterday. I just felt so proud, and I had several people tell me I was so proud to be Tabor 100 yesterday. And sometimes people get really, they say, well, we didn't hear Tabor mentioned. Ali, you didn't testify. When you hear the testimonies and the work that Sarah did to pull together the group that we wanted to testify on our behalf, it was so powerful. It was nothing more to be said. Every aspect of why this law should be repealed was covered. And I tell people the end results, and Henry and I go back and forth on this a lot when they called and said this person, this. The end results, I tell people, is the outcome. How we got there, as long as we get to the outcome, I'm okay. And I don't have to stand there and say, Tabor, 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 Tabor. People know us. Tabor is very recognized, and we have Sarah there working on our behalf. I don't need to go Tabor, 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 Tabor. I need to go, great. Look at our members here today. Look at the success. Look at the steps we made forward. And I just become focused on getting to the goal. And that's why I said this tagline is so important, power in unity, that we just stay focused on what it is that we are trying to accomplish. Did I cover all of the committee reports? One of the things that we didn't do, but we actually ended up having pins that just say pass House bill and whatever to repeal. The one thing that I did see that was lacking is, and this is where our recognition come in, our Tabor shirts. That if all of our members had on Tabor shirts, it speaks for itself. So one of the first things that I want to get membership on is getting us new shirts, new Tabor 100 shirts, so that when we go and attend events like that and others and representing Tabor, we are all consistent on recognizing Tabor by having on our Tabor shirts. And I sent her, I saw a shirt that when I was Googling this message, there's power in unity, there was somebody, there was a shirt, it was a black shirt, and it says there's power in unity. But I was sending her that, and the reason I sent you that email is to get you going on what it looked like, and the shirts, the colors, everything to be something that we were all be okay with wearing and showing up at the events. Sometimes I hear the guys say, how do we come up with yellow? So we want everyone's input, and we don't want to spend a lot of time on this. So if you can send an email to Christine with your suggestions of the Tabor shirt, do we keep it the same shirt, different colors, whatever that is, so we can start representing Tabor with wearing our shirts. We didn't have the badges that said members or any of that, and we would have been thinking we could have passed those out at the door to all Tabor members, so people could have seen how many people from Tabor was in the house. But these are things we need your support on. We need ideas to say, hey, if you guys are going to be in Olympia tomorrow, we should probably have some shirts, or we should probably have some badges. We can't think of everything. We need your voices also stepping up and representing Tabor at the different events and giving us ideas of what we could be, should be doing more of. But that was the one thing that I say, it would have been great when that camera went around the room, they saw Tabor shirts and saw all of the people that were sitting in the audience that represented Tabor. So I think that's going to be very important that we get going this year with the Tabor shirts. We kind of, as we were running out of the shirts and not wanting to order new of the old, we just came up with the idea of the badges that you have on and things in lieu of the shirts. But I think that the shirts stand out also and stand out more than the badges. Anything else from any of you before we move into the next phase of the meeting? Yes, Fred.
Apologize that I didn't make it to the legislature yesterday because I didn't know what was going on. And hopefully the next time we make an extraordinary effort, actually if we can, get a phone bank and call people and let them know. I definitely would have been there. I was there the week before lobbying on a different behalf for my licensing association. But our bill went through fine. As a matter of fact, it got approved. We got an hour after it was over. We got a due pass on it before we came back to Seattle. And I was just wondering if we got any feedback from the hearing that we had yesterday. And also, I want to add to that, will there be another? There's going to be another hearing, of course.
Yeah, and we're going to discuss all of that.
Okay.
We're going to talk about everything to do with yesterday and next
That's all I wanted to talk about.
And
At the
Fred,
next one, we can do all the things you're talking about right now.
And do we have your correct email? Because I know how important stuff like that is to you. And I went to send you an email personally, just in case you weren't seeing the Tabor emails. And I got a Yahoo and a Gmail for you.
We talked about that. I said, forget the Yahoo. I told people 3 or 4 times to use the Fred Maxey at Gmail.
Okay.
Easy to remember.
Okay.
So
I just
I'll
want
be
to
there
make sure
next
you got
time.
the correct
Thank
one.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
I'll rise to the call and accept your challenge.
Okay. We will have a board, go through the board formalities. Okay. Anything else?
guess I should address this before we get into yesterday's events. I don't know if anyone noticed, but City Council Friday, I believe, 2 days ago, made a press conference announcing that they are still standing strong with the soda tax that's happening. So regardless of how you feel about the soda tax, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. But we have a representative here from the soda tax campaign, the coalition that started they want to get our input on how the revenue is spent and how to make sure people are better informed. So however we are, regardless of what the soda tax and what your feelings of, we have to, the better we learn how to work with it, the more beneficial it can be to the city. So I think okay, exactly. I just want to know, the city council made an announcement the other day that it's still standing 8-1 in support of the soda tax, so it's still here.
And I heard that in Seattle, that the drinks and the prices kind of double on buying pops and stuff here, which really should hurt the city because everybody's got to go elsewhere now to buy their soda pop. But with that being said, Teresa, I'm going to have you to come up and to present our speaker.
Thank you. Good morning again. So we have some exciting news to share with you with the Port of Seattle. Some fabulous new policy effort around women minority business enterprise contracting. Our fearless leader, Commissioner Stephanie Bowman, who's really been our champion for inclusion and equity at the port. She has participated with Tabor extensively in support of the I-200 repeal. She's been a great supporter. We'll be implementing and rolling out this policy. Our small business department, me and Rice, myself and others, and Luis, will be charged with implementation of this new policy. And without further delay, I will introduce Miss Commissioner Stephanie Bowman.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm going to be pretty brief. Teresa really highlighted what I wanted to talk about today. So the Port of Seattle Commission, the very first action that we took in 2018 at our very first meeting was to pass what I am calling the Diversity in Contracting Policy Initiative. And this is almost a year's worth of work where we have reached out to the minority and small business community to get input on how we can improve our contracting processes at the Port of Seattle. We had 3 roundtables over that time. I think we had more than 70 people total that participated, and this is not the end of it, it is just the beginning. But there's 3 main things that I want you to remember that are coming out of this policy because it is a significant change for the Port of Seattle. Number 1, we have set the goal on the commission for the staff to triple the number of firms, WIMBY firms, that we contract with within 5 years. Number 2, we have set the goal for them to triple the dollars spent with WIMBY firms over the next 5 years. So we're really hitting it on 2 ends. It's not just about traditional dollars spent on one big capital project and you kind of check that box. We want to make sure that we're getting those small contractors, $25,000, $50,000, $200,000, able to get into the port and get some work. And number 3, the way we're really going to make sure that we drive this home with our staff is we are actually tying these goals to the performance pay of our executive team, which means that in order for them to continue to be successful at the Port of Seattle, they have to make sure that their department is meeting those goals, each and every department at the port. Thank you. This is, I have to give so much credit to our staff, and it's Teresa and Louise and me. And you guys, these are the 3 people that have driven this through the Port of Seattle on my behalf. So please work with them over the next year. As Teresa said, this is not the end of this process. Teresa is in charge of implementing a plan in 120 days. It's actually less now than 120 days. I think it's like 102 days or something. So we will be announcing that plan, and that's really we're gonna need your input at that point too. This is what it looks like, this is how we're gonna get there. We're not gonna get it perfect the first time, so please bear with us. It's gonna be a work in progress, and we're gonna continue those roundtables with the contracting community. so that we're always getting your input at least twice a year. This is how it's going. We're going to be completely transparent about where we're meeting those goals, where we're not meeting those goals, and we're always going to be seeking to get better. This is something, you know, I've only been on the commission, I was just reelected, I've only been there 4 years, but from the very beginning, it's just really gotten to me that we have not done enough on this, and so it is an issue that I've pushed hard with the rest of the commission. I will say the rest of the commission stands with me on this issue, so this is not me alone, it's the entire Port of Seattle. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. So thank you, again, thank you to our staff that has carried this forward. The second thing, which I know that you all know, but the Port of Seattle, I know, I'm short. There we go, thanks. Port of Seattle Commission, yet again, just expressed our very, very strong support for the repeal of I-200. We have been out in front on this issue. I don't know where other public agencies are, but the Port of Seattle certainly is a strong supporter of repealing I-200. When I was here last year, and I testified last year at the hearing, again, Ollie and the rest of the team, and Sarah, my God, what a turnout yesterday. That was just incredible, especially because last year there was like 4 of us that testified. And so you deserve so much credit for the turnout that you had. It was really impactful. Last year though, when I was here, I did mention, you know, be careful of what we're asking for. When the repeal goes through, whether it's this legislative session or not, there's going to be a fight. And I think those of you that were in the hearing room yesterday and heard John Carlson call in, the only person opposed to this, he does represent a lot of money. And so if this repeal is to go through, in my humble opinion, there's going to be an initiative filed immediately. So it's not going to be over. I mean, it'll be a great day to celebrate if the legislature passes it, but the very next day, everybody in this room and your neighbors and your friends and your family and your other businesses better start contributing money to an initiative and be ready for that fight, because it will happen. And the one thing I would add to that, just from my years of public policy experience, think about the idea of running an initiative ourselves, because then we have the ability to write it the way we want to write it. And you message it the way you want to message it. So I want to throw that out again. Henry and I have talked about this for the last year. And so just, again, be prepared for a big fight. It's not going to be over. So with that, I don't have anything else. If anybody has any questions about the port, I'm happy to answer. No? Nate?
Commissioner, thanks, first of all, for all of your support for the commission and what they're doing. When you get ready to roll out, is there going to be a hearing or something on what you were just talking about?
For the diversity and contracting, yes. We'll do, the staff will come forward with the plan after 120 days. We'll do a public hearing on it.
Okay, because I was going to say, we, like we turned out yesterday, we need to turn out because
that'd be great.
The same sort of thing, we need to show support for this plan, the same way we showed support yesterday. We need to show support because they have cameras in that hearing room as well, and they need to sweep the room and see nothing but us in that room supporting what they do, because they're going out on a limb also. Not everybody agrees with this plan. So
that's true.
Let us find out when it's going to be rolled out. Let us know when it's going to be rolled out, and we'll turn out for that one as well.
Thank you, Nate. Appreciate that. All right. All right. Thanks very much.
I want to start rolling the bit, because we've talked about so much of what happened yesterday. I know you guys are like, well, what happened yesterday? And so I want to start on some of that. If you could start, I'm trying to see, do I start? Because it's 2 segments of the video, and we have them separated. We have the Senator Chase and Hasagawa portion, and then we have where our people start testifying. I was going to start with that one portion of Senator Chase and Bob Hasagawa testifying. Nate, you were there. Sarah, you were there. Or should I start with just the first group that went up and testified? The first, where it was Stephanie, Teresa, Roger. What do you think is the best way to start this? Because we can't play the whole thing.
I was going to say, either way you want to go, I have the TVW. If anybody wants to get home and watch the whole thing, there's a link. I can give you the link.
Right, and we're going to send that out, and we're going to put it on the Tabor website. Okay, so the testimony piece, the one to start at the 1 hour, and it starts out with the guy that you mentioned they called in, the one opposing person and stuff. And while she's getting that ready to roll, did you want to speak quickly on the?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah.
agenda.
No, it's
Go ahead.
okay.
Couple
I'm sorry.
minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it super short. My name is Steven. I've worked with Real on De-Escalate Washington. I was his organizer there, helping to pass I-940. Worked with them before that at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, working on gun violence prevention issues. And for the last 6 months, 7 months here, I've been working with the community-based coalition, the Seattle Healthy Kids Coalition, working on the sugary drinks tax. And so I know that it's a very contentious issue, and there's a lot of really good reasons not to support the mechanism of the tax. However, I do want to share where the tax came from and open up just the beginnings of a conversation about trying to get that feedback to these community members. It's about this city and improving the policy as much as we can here, but these groups are also taking this to other cities, and the conversation has not been nuanced up till this date. It's been, business doesn't like it, and here's the health experts that do like it. And that's about as far as we've gotten. And I think the conversation can be more nuanced. I think we can change it in the future to be better for business and better explained to business. But I'll just start and leave just from the, I just want to basically open up the conversation by explaining where we were coming from when we put the tax forward. So the coalition was founded by Estela Ortega from El Centro de la Raza, Dr. Ben Danielson, and Vic Coleman from the Childhood Obesity Prevention Coalition. It was coming from this feedback that came from the last Obama's Center for Disease Control director, who said that the most effective way at tackling the obesity and diabetes epidemic was to pass a sugar drinks tax. So the purpose of the tax was not to fund revenue, but was rather to affect public health. Reduce the consumption of sugary beverages, and in so doing, reduce diabetes and obesity incidences, especially in the communities where the American Beverage Association, frankly, targets its ads most frequently. A black child is 3 times more likely to see an ad for a sugary drink than a white child is. And so that was the basis of the tax. Through the robust community involvement process, the funding the tax was tightened. The nexus became clear that this is not just, you can't just discourage one behavior, you have to also support and positively enforce the other behavior. So we created programs like FreshBucks, which expanded food access benefits and incentives to corner grocery stores, to Safeways. And we're seeing the benefits of that, hopefully, and mitigating some of the damage that will be done to businesses. So that, well, maybe the sodas cost 20 cents, 30 cents more for the 20-ounce version. Or, like you said, sometimes it's a very steep price increase. But also, many of the consumers will now have benefits to double their money at those same corner grocery stores to purchase water, fresh fruits and vegetables, canned goods. So that's sort of the basis of the tax. That's, I wanted to communicate that because I think there's a lot of miscommunication going back and forth about why this tax was passed. It was not like what happened in Cook County, which was about, and when you start in that process for a tax like this, the whole thing falls apart. And they ended up funding like police departments with funds from the soda tax, which is incredibly regressive, not just mechanism, but also the funding. We came from a much different place when the community coalition came together on this one. The purpose was to impact health, and particularly the consumption of sugary drinks. And then the nexus was tightened around funding to make sure that we're positively incentivizing access to fresh foods, education funding like 13th year. And so I'll leave it there because I know you guys got a full agenda left. But I'm sort of in conversation here with Real about ways that I can try to mend and create a more nuanced conversation about this, and just providing some of that feedback to the community group that has worked so long to put this tax forward and coming, I think, from a good place, ultimately. So I'll just leave it there, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, did they have
I
questions?
have something.
Okay,
Yes.
yes.
You touched on something that is very, very important for all of us who are brown people. The manipulation done by media. You said that brown children are 3 times more likely to see one of these ads than white children. Absolutely, and those beverage organizations give money to the NAACP and other black organizations so they will not come together and say something about the obesity of our children and the increase of diabetes among our children. So it is really important that we pay attention to that and not fall victim to manipulation by these big companies that are are out to get our money and don't care anything, not a damn about our health or our children's health. So thank you for that.
And also, you said manipulation, you know, being in the forefront, but isn't it manipulative to make it money that causes the switch around? Because people that are addicted to cigarettes are paying how much now for a pack or a carton of cigarettes? Because when they put money on it, to me, unless the money is going to be spent for a greater purpose, I can't see money stopping people from not eating sugar when they're addicted to it. You know, our society is addicted to that sugar. So having to pay more money is not going to stop them. So I'm wondering then.
We are targeted by R.J. Reynolds Nabisco as well.
I don't want to take too much time. Well, I'll just say that I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Right.
And from what we've seen of the data, every cent increase in the price results in a.
Can you grab that so we can hear you?
I don't want to.
You can.
What we're gonna do, because if we can make this an agenda item, but just for members to know, this is the type of stuff to where you being on a committee to say what things are happening out there needs to be something that Tabor focus on, that comes out of government affairs. So the people that are on the government affairs committee is who vet what's going on and where Tabor need to be and our voices need to be, or what issues we need to bring up to Tabor. And that's where the government affairs chair will present at the board meetings things that he thinks that we should bring somebody in to talk about and to get on the agenda. And this is what I mean when I say every voice counts, and there are things that we need to be aware of and be focusing on, but we need all of you to be on a committee making recommendations through your committee to bring to the board to say what we discuss and who we have at these meetings. With that, I'm going to have Sarah, Real, Nate all be prepared to talk about yesterday, but start out with let's start out with one of the panels, the first group of panels that went up at the hearing yesterday.
Is it going to be loud enough?
Chairman Hunt, can you hear me? I can hear you, John, yes.
Well, we need to be.
It's right there, yeah. Can we turn off these lights?
First of all, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, I would like to thank you. First of all, for introducing
Is it
yourself
full
for the record,
volume?
John. Even a better idea, yes. I'm John Carlson. 20 years ago, I chaired the campaign to qualify and pass Initiative 200, the Washington State Civil Rights Act. I'm here to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 6406, speaking just for myself, of course. And John, I just want you to, we're going to try to keep to about 2 minutes, but since you're the loyal opposition, I'll be a little lenient, but try to be, as always, brief and succinct. You know the radio deal, you can do it. Yes, I don't get 3 hours like my radio job. In your course not, okay. Thank you for extending the opportunity. I appreciate it, John. The Liberal Advocacy Group Seattle Indivisible endorsed this bill, saying it would, and I'm quoting them here, restore an affirmative action component to the award of public contracts. Imagine my surprise when I learned that 6406 is actually a full-on repeal of I-200 as it applies to college admissions and public employment and contracting. Some of you may not have been here when I-200 passed in 1998. Let's review that election. 98 was a good year for Democrats at the polls. That's the year that Jay Inslee made his way back to Congress, defeating a Republican incumbent. I-200, which was outspent 5-1 and opposed by big business and big labor, most news media, almost all of academia, won with almost 59% of the vote. It won 38 of Washington's 39 counties, very nearly won King County. In fact, it won almost everywhere in King County outside the city of Seattle. According to the Seattle Times poll, it won a majority of men and women. 80% of Republicans supported it. So did 62% of independents. And interestingly, So did 41% of Democrats. Think about that. Even though nearly every elected Democratic lawmaker that year opposed I-200, even though it was outspent 5-1, more than 4 in 10 Democrats still supported I-200. How come? Because voters believe that all of us, not as whites, not as blacks, not as men, not as women, but all of us as Americans should be protected from race or sex discrimination when applying for a college education or a government job or a public contract. That's the principle that drove I-200 to victory, and will do again if need be. Regardless of what party controls government, it's wrong when that government uses different rules for different races. When it comes to state colleges and public employment, our racial differences, like our religious differences, should be minimized, not magnified. During the I-200 campaign, we were warned that its passage would mean an end to diversity on our college campuses. But look around. Everyone who's been on college campuses for 20 years knows that we have more diversity on our campuses today than we did 20 years ago. You don't need racial preferences and set-asides to have diversity in our society.
So what we're going to do now is move forward to some of the testimony, but I wanted you all to be prepared and to hear what we're going to be fighting against and what's being said, so you know this was the basis. You heard the basis of getting this law passed, and as Stephanie said, it's going to be a fight. So I wanted you all to kind of get a feel for that, but I think the most powerful part was what we all did after that.
Lieutenant Allen, and on deck will be Stephanie Bowman, April Putney, and Benson Zabla. And those on deck, if you could just be waiting and ready to go, that would help a lot. Thank you.
Right. Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Teresa Burnson. I'm the director of the Office of Minority and Women's Business Enterprises. We certify that businesses are small and that they're owned and controlled by a minority or a woman. In addition to that, we're statutorily charged with reporting the amount of dollars that state agencies and higher education institutions spend in contract and procurement with certified small minority women-owned firms. So I will give you a couple data points. In the 5 years before the passage of I-200, state agencies and higher education institutions spent 10% of their contracting and procurement dollars with certified minority and women-owned businesses. Since the passage of I-200, that rate has declined to an average of 3%. And additionally, the number of certified firms has declined by nearly half. If the rate of spending would have stayed at the levels prior to I-200, an additional $3.5 billion would have gone to small minority and women-owned businesses. I have to answer questions.
Mr. Chair, Ranking Member Militia, members of the committee, my name is Roger Millar. I'm the Secretary of Transportation for the state of Washington. Our agency does approximately $2 billion a year in contracting, some of it in a federal program that is exempt from I-200, and most of it in a state program that is not exempt. I've been working on this issue since I came here in 2015, and one of the things that concerns us with I-200 is the difference between actions of state government and the outcomes of those actions. Are the actions discriminatory or providing a preference, or do the outcomes result in discrimination or preferential treatment? I came here from Montana, and what I learned in Montana is you don't need facts to have a bar fight, but facts are helpful when you're having a discussion, particularly a discussion of issues that can get as emotional as these. We recently conducted what's called a disparity study, and the purpose of that disparity study is to look at the availability of firms and their utilization. And for the first time ever, we looked at both our federal spend and our state spend. When we looked at our federal spend, what we found was While white males make up about 38% of the population of Washington State, they control 81% of the contracting. The other 19% is divided between white women-owned businesses, Native American businesses, Asian Pacific businesses, Hispanic businesses, and African American businesses. When you look at the availability of firms and how we utilize them, on our federal program, our utilization rate is about 92%, where we have a mandatory DBE goal as a condition of award of a contract. About 92% of the available disadvantaged businesses are being engaged in the contracting. In our state program that has no mandatory goal, where we have aspirational goals, it's a voluntary program, our 92% availability or utilization drops to 33%. So what we're seeing is a 60-point spread in terms of the outcome of our actions, and we're seeing African Americans who make up well, they're getting 1.3% of the work on our lights. I'm sorry, RaePop. 1.3% of the work on our state programs. They're getting 22%, 1.3% utilization rather on our state programs, 22% utilization on our federal programs. Both of those numbers are awful numbers, but we're seeing again that 60-point spread between where we can apply goals on our federal program and where we have not in the past applied goals on our state program. Thank you. You have to answer your questions. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the State Senate Government Committee. My name is Kevin Allen, and I'm a member of the Executive Board of the Washington Federation of State Employees. I'm a 75 graduate of Yale University with a BA in Administrative Sciences, and some of my success can be attributed to affirmative action. As a state employee, I'm an adjudicator in the Division of Disability Determination Services in the Department of Social and Health Services. And I'm here representing the well over 40,000 state employees who serve the over 2 million citizens in Washington State. I've come to testify in favor of this bill, 6406, and our union has gone on record supporting the repeal of I-200 for many reasons. Most of all, as a disability adjudicator, there's a term called resistance to gravity. You know, when a person is weak or paralyzed, whatever, you can't raise up. And gravity is natural. And left to its own devices, we're going to have, and it's shown over history, we're going to have disparate treatment, bias, unequal pay, that's been baked into the system, baked into our society. We have to face that fact. Affirmative action was put together to kind of give that back up, much like Senator Hoskowitz showed with that box. It's not a quota. It's a goal. And it's clear that when I-200 came in and took away the optional affirmative action, gravity took its place. And that's why you see these dramatic numbers dropping in college admissions, in contracting, and employment. And that's why we need to pass this bill to bring back fairness and equity to Washington State, to increase diversity in education, employment, and contracting, and reverse the trend that's been taking place over the past 20 years. I know it's election year, so let's not resist. Let's resist the gravitational pull of politics, and let's rise above that and bring back a tool that's a citizen device to make the playing field more level. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Stephanie Bowman, April Putney, and Edson Zabla. And on deck, and please be ready to come up and testify, Karen Hikes, Herbie Martin, and Sandy Hanks.
Great, good morning, Chairman Hunt and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stephanie Bowman. I am a Port of Seattle Commissioner. On behalf of my colleagues at the Port of Seattle, I am here to offer our strong and repeated support for Senate Bill 6406 for
for the repeal of Initiative 200. For the last 20 years, our hands at the Port of Seattle have been tied. Because of the restrictions of I-200, we have empirical evidence that disparity has grown, meaning opportunity has been denied to those who have not had the traditional advantages of contracting. I would ask you a question. How many Caucasian males have come before this committee saying that they have not had enough work in the last 20 years? The board cares deeply about this issue for a number of reasons, but I'd like to highlight two. One, our role in providing critical infrastructure to the state of Washington through the investments in SeaTac International Airport and marine terminals in the third busiest gateway in the United States. In 2007, we spent $182 million, and over the next 5 years, we anticipate spending $3.2 billion in infrastructure investment. In short, we have a lot of work and we need as many qualified contractors as possible on deck to help us with that. Number two, our role as an economic development catalyst for King County and the state through RCW 5304. The Port of Seattle interprets that to mean opportunity for all, not just for some. The Port is doing our part. I'll wrap up here quickly. Just last week, we passed a diversity in contracting initiative. We have set a goal for our staff to triple the number of firms, women firms that we contract with over the next 5 years. We've set a goal to triple the number of dollars spent with women firms over the next 5 years, but we have tied our executives' pay to reaching those goals. In short, the Port of Seattle is doing our part. We very respectfully ask you to do yours and repeal I-200. Thank you.
Taking time away from people who want to testify, so. Got it. Good morning. My name is Edson Zavala. I'm the Policy Advisor for Economic Inclusion and Economic Equity in the Office of Mayor Jenny A. Durkin in the City of Seattle. In 2016, the State of Washington, through agencies and educational institutions, spent about $5.4 billion on goods, services, and contracts. The amount of money that was awarded to minority or women businesses was $155 million, and this is less than the state was spending goods and services in 1998. This undermines the founding premise of I-200 to eliminate discrimination, and rather what we have seen is enhanced and entrenched discrimination in Washington State. I-200 has impacted admission to universities and employment opportunities. I-200 promised to stop discrimination in college admissions based on race, but instead has set up other roadblocks at the time that public colleges and universities want to foster more diverse student bodies. Employment opportunities are based on who you know, and when you're not allowed to enroll in universities, then you cannot build the relationships needed to advance forward. From a contracting perspective, it has had a very chilling effect on the economic development of the companies throughout the state, and cities and public agencies cities and agencies rely on to perform the work. We're losing the ability to have all our companies compete on an equitable level and losing companies from our bid pool because we aren't able to reach out and support women and minority-owned businesses. Furthermore, the City of Seattle believes I-200 is in conflict with the national best practices and legal standards for government evidence-based contracting equity programs. It's the city's priority to be a more affordable, inclusive city, building economic opportunity for all of its residents. The city believes I-200 unnecessarily limits the tools available to implement reparative measures to address inequities and participation of women and minority-owned businesses. Thank you.
Okay. So, and there are going to be more because I want to leave time for discussion, but I think we should now go back to, because I think that picture that Bob Hasagawa showed spoke a lot. So we can go back to the two sponsors of the bill, and then from there, Nate, Sarah, Real, you all take over and let's start having a dialogue going on.
Oftentimes, it is our public policy that causes these problems. And by our public policy,
Can you pull that microphone a little closer?
sure. It is by our public, okay. It is by our public policy that we cause a great deal of this pain in our communities. Whether it's increasing property taxes to the point where people living on a limited income cannot afford to pay the property taxes. We drive them out of their homes. Whether it is homelessness, because we have made living in a home too expensive for people. No.
Whether it is, for example, one of the things that I am very concerned with right now, and I have a bill that I'm trying to move through this legislature, the GED. You know, people who want to get a better job or who want to have go to college, who want to return, adults who need to get a GED in order to get access to a credential that will certify their competency to participate in our economy. And we're denying them the ability to be able to do that. By our public policy. Initiative 200 was put in by the people. We thought we were doing the right thing. It turns out we didn't do the right thing. We did the wrong thing. And I am very grateful to you for opening up this issue so we can take a look at it. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Senator Maloney. Thank you, Senator, for bringing this and starting this discussion. So just tell me in your own words, I-200 simply prohibits the state from discriminating against a group based on race, sex, color, and natural origin. And that's been all the issues we've been discussing for the last 2 years. So why is that wrong? Why should we now discriminate based on sex, national origin, race, etc.? So why is repealing that concept a good thing?
I think it goes down. I've been thinking a lot about that very issue. I appreciate you bringing that up. I think that when we legislate here, we hopefully have a set of principles by which we guide our actions, justice and fairness. And when we find that the public policies that we enact are not fair and are not just, we look at the outcome. What happened was, you might have a public policy that you think is a good deal. This is fair, it's just, everybody wins, and then you take a look at the empirical evidence and you see that that is not the case, that you need to revisit, your issues. Because if we have a principle in this state that people are equal, we stand up in the Senate and pledge allegiance to the flag with justice and fairness for all. Justice for all means fairness. And if our policies are not fair, we need to come back. If one group has been decided, whether overtly or accidentally, to pay the burden of bad policy, while others are not, then we need to look at it. And I'm not saying that some groups should pay the price. I'm not saying that because we get justice and fairness. For example, for African Americans, that say white women or another ethnic group should pay the price. We have a responsibility for balance and fairness. And I think that's why we need to look at this policy, because the outcome of the policy has been totally unfair.
And I guess I would ask, we talk about prohibiting discrimination, but we also, one of the keys of this, I think, are two phrases: preferential treatment and priority in admissions. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, I agree. Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd like to sort of throw in a little
on this.
Yeah, I'm not a very good lurker, I guess.
He's also second on the bill, am I right, Ann?
Do you mind if I had something to say, but I would like to address your questions too, because they are very important questions. And Senator Malosha, I think you're hitting at the heart of what the opposition is trying to convey, that this is like somehow reverse discrimination. But the issue about discrimination is people who are in a minority have no ability to discriminate against people who are in a majority. Discrimination is a result of a power imbalance. And so in nature, if you have more force pushing one way than the other, the object naturally goes the other direction, right? It's a question of balance of power. So if we're going to have real equity in our society, we have to bring equity to counterbalance that overwhelming power in some kind of way. So to say that people who are in a minority can actually discriminate against a minority, maybe on an individual case-by-case thing, but we're talking about macro concepts here. We're talking about society. And there have been 1,000-fold more cases of discrimination to build the power of the majority over the minority over time. So this is about bringing balance, as Senator Chase said, back into our society. But what I want to do is show just a little cartoon to give a concept of what that was. There was a handout that I handed up to you. So this is a pretty good, it looks like this. You may have seen this, and I'm sure, it's showing on the board right now, but this is essentially all we're talking about. People say we have equality in society, but how equal does the child on the right in the left picture feel? And if the box represents equality, yeah, they all got one box to stand on, big deal. Where is the real equity in this comparison picture, though? The child on the right comes from a tougher starting position. If we're going to allow that child to actually enjoy life and participate in what's going on out there in the real world, that child, because he or she's coming from a further starting place from behind, needs more support to get that equity. So that's all we're talking about. So when I-200 was passed back in 1998, December 1998, for instance, there were 50% of the Native Americans were on track to go to college. Just 6 years later, that had dropped after the implementation of I-200 down to 38%. We see that type of inequity throughout. I handed you out another matrix that looks like this one. So if you go to the right column of the darkened portion, and it's by year. So the total spend of government contracting dollars, for instance, back when I-200 was being considered, total government spend to minority contractors was 13.3%. A mere 6 years later, in 2004, from 13.3% down to 1.66%. So what happens when we deny minority contractors arbitrarily? I mean, we could have fixed this. We could make sure that we're trying to be equitable, and even 13.3% was not equitable, but it was sure a lot better than 1.6%. So when we see the implementation of I-200 taking away that second box that the child on the right needs to have equity in our society, then we're just further oppressing that. And so we see disparities popping up everywhere. You know, in the criminal justice system, in the higher education system, in housing. If you look in Seattle right now, you know, historically diverse communities like in the Central District or South Seattle, people are just being forced right out of it because there's no equity in our revenue practices, our taxing policies, our social policies that support people to be able to afford to live in our own communities. So what we're talking about is just because disparities have grown so much with the advent of I-200 and the removal of that second box of support for the child, I think it's time for us to reconsider this social experiment that has been a drastic failure and give people of color and minorities a real opportunity of equity once again. So I thank you, Chair Hunt, and members of the committee for considering this a very important bill to bring in society.
Thank you, but no, let's not go to get into applause here. Senator Walsh has a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming in front of the committee. Help me understand, you know, a lot of recent criticism against the president is that he supports discrimination. against country of origin, race, sex. And Act 200 prohibits that. So this seems like this would go against the kind of criticism of the president if we allow this to happen. But more specifically, at least in other states, how this affects the Asian American community. They are frankly overrepresented in higher ed, because it's merit-based. It's not based on other factors. But if you allow discrimination, you find out that starts pushing down attendance for that community. Is that fair that one group is given advantages over others, and you start picking the winners and losers for the different communities of color?
I think advantages is a relative term, and I think that's the wrong frame to look at it. To talk about the state of the body politic in the United States when you've got President Trump out there, I've become a firm believer in Missouri's slogan, "Show me." And what do the numbers say? Where are we going from there? So we just see further exacerbation of income inequality and housing inequality, criminal justice inequality. In fact, to deal with some of those issues, for instance, right now we've got a bill 5588, which is sitting on the floor calendar to do racial impact statements on felony convictions so that we can passing bills, whether or not they're going to have disparately negative impacts on different communities of color. We need to know these things, but the data is showing that we're going the wrong way. So regardless of the rhetoric, and when we talk about discrimination, I think that gets back to my first answer to your question, which is that discrimination is the result of a power imbalance. So if you don't have power, it's impossible for you to discriminate. You're being discriminated against. And, the opposite of black and white, well, you could say, if you're not black, you're white. But there's so many different shades in between that, and it's not a black and white issue. It's about bringing equity back to the system.
But don't you find like this discriminates against the Asian American community? That's what the data shows.
Well, the data is, and certainly there are segments of the Asian community that is doing very well. But I think you need to disaggregate that data, because if you look at what it boils down to is economics. I mean, to have a shot in our capitalist system, you have to have an economic foundation on which to build your future. So when we're talking about the Asian demographic as a whole, I think that's doing an injustice to many of the newer immigrants. You take the Pacific Islanders communities, not to disrespect them at all, but they're coming from a much further back starting place than those of us who have been here for several generations now. So, we're going to be doing a Day of Remembrance recognition here on February 19th. And that historically is one of the high or maybe low lights of the discrimination that exists. It's taken generations for our community to recover from that, but the African American community still has not recovered from the historic slavery and the discrimination that they've had in the past. Most minority communities, I think that in our era of high technology, some within the Asian demographic have found an niche there. I will grant you that. But most of the Asian demographic is still struggling.
Let's shut him up.
You want to make a quick comment? I do want to make a comment. I want to submit for the record. I have letters from the president of the University of Washington, the president of Washington State University, and from King County Council, and also a letter from the King County Labor Council, the Martin Luther King County Labor Council, in support of our efforts to take another look at this and to move this bill forward. So I'd like to submit those for the record.
centers on any of them.
Is that, my understanding was that there is broader and broader support now that this has been 20 years. So this was when I was a freshman in college, when I-200 was on the ballot. And I had major fears of what I-200 would mean for the future of not just myself, but my colleagues. And I think, to your point, the data shows. And I think even Seattle Times recently has made cases for consideration to repeal I-200. Is that correct?
Senator Cooter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Hasagawa, your cartoon reminds me of something that my dad used to say to the nine of us when we would complain that he was treating the other one more favorably. And he would say, fair ain't always 50-50. So I think while I-200 was very well intentioned, it misses the context. And this is what you and Senator Chase were providing for us today. And my question goes to the statistics. If we were to repeal this, what do you project will happen in terms of how quickly we can recover from this hole we've seemed to have dug ourselves into?
Go ahead. I have thoughts about that.
If I may. We would pass, in order to recover quickly, there are a huge number of public policy changes that we would have to see and that we would have to monitor. And we have been attempting to have an inclusive society for many, many, many years, and numerous people have worked on this issue. I don't think we can say it will ever be over, that we will successfully achieve a just and fair society. But we can try, and we have not been trying. It doesn't happen without some pretty strong guidance and an even hand. The invisible hand needs to come out and start getting and paying attention to the effect of our policies. You know, we talk about that we want a dynamic fiscal loan, for example, to see what the impact is of our actions. We don't measure the impact of our actions in the aggregate. We will see, different empirical evidence studies that come out about different policies, but you can't just say, wave a hand and say, oh, it's all fixed, because we have destroyed the infrastructure that had been built up, for example, on the contracting. And it's a huge infrastructure to make an economic sector fair and just. We have to rebuild that. So it'll take a while.
And that's actually where I was going to go, is that I don't see anything changing anytime soon. What it does do is remove the barrier from success, but success still requires a supportive infrastructure, social infrastructure. So, for instance, if you refer back to this chart again, with the amount of spend that the public spending has declined to minority contractors, that means the infrastructure or those contractors have begun to fail. So if you notice the second from the right column, the number of certified minority contractors in 1998 was 1,121. And then when it had dropped to 1.66, there was only 378 minority contractors. How do we rebuild that whole infrastructure so that the community can succeed? That's going to take a lot of time, and the similar requirements for rebuilding infrastructure in the education system and housing our entire economy. It's going to take a long time, but what this does is removes that barrier and give our communities an opportunity to succeed.
Okay, so let's stop it. And the whole thing. So as you can see, that's why I said yesterday was so powerful and how it's important that we show up. There's a lot of more testimonies behind the ones that you've heard, and we're gonna put this out on our website. It's too large to try to email out, but we will try to get it on the website Monday, Tuesday of next week, where you can see the others that came behind. But it was testimony after testimony behind that. hearing the message that you're hearing that was happening. The Republican that you saw there, one of the things that I said when I was talking to people afterwards, and you saw the body language and on, so you know how this person felt. By the end, the body language did soften up. After all of the testimony, I'm not saying it changed your mind, but you definitely saw a different body language after hearing all of the testimonies coming through. One of the things that you won't see on the video that was very powerful was when they escorted, and she called me and said, I am going to get somebody to drive me in, and on. I want to be there. When they escorted Senator Rosa Franklin in the room and set her on the front row, that alone, and at the end they asked her if she wanted to speak, and basically what she was saying is her appearance there says it all. But as you can see, we have a lot, that was powerful support toward what we are doing and what we've been talking about for years. And when you see the emails come out from us that says, as I told you all a year ago and 2 years ago, when you see that call to action in the subject line, read the emails, because we're saying we need you to show up for this. And that's the type of support we're gonna need to keep going to keep this going. And one of the things that I've challenged several agencies, and I have other phone calls to make, is that video clipping, and not just for the agencies, not for public, the city, the county, and all. I think that all employees and all government agencies need to see that video and hear. It's not just somebody walking in the room saying, I didn't get a contract, or I this. I think it's so important that that video gets circulated and circulated and circulated before the opposition start poisoning folks. That we can be proactive on, and that's what I'm hoping Sarah, Nate, and all of you guys are going to talk about. We can be very proactive right now in getting the support and the momentum going to keep the message on repealing I-200. But all of you, all of us, and getting it out to anyone who's not here today, we're all gonna need to do our part for this. But I can tell you, I were very into listening to what people were saying and those testimonies, and to see how powerful that was, and how powerful it would be to have all of you there. And we did it perfect. The timing was perfect. I think we got everybody in just at the closing. So it worked out. But when they looked in the room, they automatically, in the beginning of the session, they said, well, we know what everybody is in the room for, and we have, I think it was 19 signed in to testify. Abdul testified, but it was very powerful, and this is what we mean when we keep saying to you guys, your voice matter. Don't just say it's never gonna happen and give up. We have made some great steps here. Sarah, Nate, you guys want to come up and we start a dialogue? Is Teresa still here? Teresa gave a great graph, and I think we have it handed out of the numbers and what it means. There was a lot, even people that wasn't there, come on up, because I can talk. People that wasn't there, there was letters sent in. I got emails from the Tabor members that said, I can't make it, but I did send a letter. I can't make it, but I did send letters. Let those letters keep pouring in. And when we send you emails, we make it easy. We send you a letter to use. We send you the links to who to send the letters to. Take that serious. Send those letters. It's making a difference.
If anybody wants to watch the whole thing, you can watch the whole thing by going to the TBW website. TBW has this up. You have it? You're going to put it up on the website? The link to it, and then you just go to it. Well, like Holly said, I'm glad everybody turned out. There are a couple of things, and I'm glad Stephanie hit on them. John Carlson and his people, for those of you who either weren't here when it happened the first time 20 years ago, or just heard what he just said, 20 years ago, they mounted a campaign to put I-200 on the ballot in the first place. And the way in which they got this thing passed is they couched it as reverse discrimination, okay? And they confused people. So they said basically, how could you be for discrimination? And so vote no. So when most people thought when they were voting yes, that they were voting no. Okay, because they were like, we don't want to vote against, you know. So they thought they were voting, and so when we get to the point where we're going to have to run a campaign, and we're probably going to have to run a campaign, we're going to have to take that into consideration so we don't make that same mistake again. But in the meantime, to get this thing passed, we first got to get through this thing and get it passed. So I noticed that when we were up here and we had people who were on stage and talking and testifying, when the next time we get ready to go through and testify, that I want you to get out of your head, get out of your mouth, and clear out of your vocabulary affirmative action. This is not affirmative action. Affirmative action, I don't care if you think it means affirmative action, I don't care if you feel like I'm in affirmative action, I've benefited from affirmative action, I don't have a problem with affirmative action, I don't have a problem with the fact of saying some of that, but if you're trying to pass legislation, it's like anything else. What are you trying to get done? And so it's not what you want, it's what is going to pass down there in the legislature. It's just like the senator who was up here, and he was trying to trip these people up when he was saying, Donald Trump believes, he knew he didn't believe that when he was sitting up there on that dais saying what he was saying, but he was playing to an audience that was sitting out. John Carlson, when he was calling in, knew he didn't believe that, but he had his talking points. So the talking points that we're going to have when you go in to testify are going to have to be a couple of things. One, remind these members that the last time it was very confusing, okay? Secondly, that this is not, and I thought Bob Hasagawa did an amazing job pointing out the difference between reverse discrimination. You can't discriminate against somebody when you're not in a position of power to discriminate. That was very good. If you don't watch anything else, watch that again, because that was very good. That you can't discriminate against somebody when you're not in a position of power to discriminate. David and Goliath. David could never discriminate against the Goliath. Now, he might be able to kill him in some way if he happened to luckily do something right, but just discriminate against it never could happen. And thirdly, we're going to have to use the numbers. So Teresa, I think those numbers are going to be so important for us to get 2 or 3 numbers that people can use that are just going to be just unequivocal, that they can't argue with in no form, in no form or fashion, that once I-200 went into, if we went from 16% down to 1%. I mean, you just can't argue with that. You went from when Millar said you went from $6 billion down to $1 billion or whatever the number was, you can't argue with that. And it's the state's numbers. So we need some numbers that we can use. So if we have 3 things, because when you get ready to go down there on a lobby day that we put together, a lobby day, you're only going to get 15 minutes. So having more than 3 talking points is useless. You know, you're not going to get an hour-long hearing. It's going to be 3 minutes. So, and remember to call it equity and fairness, 3 talking points. Last time it was confusing. It wasn't reverse discrimination. You can't discriminate when you're not in a position to discriminate. And here are the numbers you need to know.
Something else that is effective, and that is calling in your represented electeds. You can call in their office, leave your opinion. If you cannot attend those hearings, I've been making a lot of phone calls lately on the issue of DACA, the youth students, and I've called my representative elected in Washington State and in the federal government. So you don't have to go to Olympia. You can call in.
How many of you know what district and who your representatives are? You don't even have to. If you don't feel bad if you don't. Just get online. Sarah will give you the on the website there's a link that you can go through, and it'll take you right there, and it'll show you exactly who they are. And it's the coolest thing you've ever seen. Not only will it show you who your representative is, if you click on it, it'll let you send them an email right to their email. So you can send them an email right there. It'll give you the bill number that you're trying and everything. So it makes it very easy for you. Real?
So, yes, yesterday was great. I want to give a special thank you to everyone that showed up, especially people that testified, Edson, Teresa, Stephanie, Jesse, Abdul, you all did amazing jobs testifying yesterday. It was a very proud moment, and the effects of it went a very long way. I'm sorry if there's a lot of people testifying, so if I missed anybody, I apologize, but we have full confidence that the committee is going to pass this through committee, and it's going to be on the Senate floor by next week. So what's going to happen after that is it's going to have to go through the House after that. So we are going to have a chance to testify again. It's like what Nate said, we've got to have our talking points in order. So we'll make sure we hopefully give enough advance notice, because sometimes the Senate moves, or the legislature moves very slow. In this case, it moved very fast. This bill was just dropped last Monday, and then it was in the hearing, 11 days later on Friday. That almost never happens. So I want to give a lot of credit to who made that happen. It was Sarah here, our lobbyist, who did an amazing job getting that through that fast. Jesse Weinberry in the back also had a huge role in that as well, working with Senator Chase, getting that bill dropped. In case you don't know, we had a House version of this bill, 1158. It's been going that Sharon Tomiko Santos has been pushing for 19 years since I-200 passed. Senate Bill 6406 is a slight difference in it, so it's not officially a companion bill. So it's going to have to rotate back through the House. We want to be able to amend the language of 1158 to get a companion bill, but that's going to take too long because this is a short session, so we have to get this moving fast before the deadline. If we don't, then we miss our chance and we have to wait till next year. We don't want to wait till next year. We want to get this done now and as soon as possible. So the best route we're going to have after talking to legislators yesterday is just to push this through the Senate, get this into another committee. It's going to go through the State Government Committee on the House side, and then get that passed through that. We believe it has a better chance to go through the State Government Committee than the Capital Budget Committee right now as a companion bill. So I will brief everyone on the process along with Sarah, and I apologize for this last month for not being as informed, reaching out to you. Everyone who signed up who clicked the interest of being interest in government affairs, I will be reaching out to you very soon. I'll be tackling this new role as best I can, because I was quite busy last month with Initiative 940, which also got certified this past week as well. So that will be on the ballot this year. So this the process is we want to get as much pressure as possible. As was mentioned, we want to call our legislators in advance already. So find out your senator right now is going through the Senate, and call your House and representatives as well. Every call they get, they feel that pressure. They think there's another 100 or another 1,000 people that also will support this for every single person that calls that. So if you take that initiative and put pressure on your legislator, they feel that there's people behind you. They don't think it's just 100 people calling them. They feel like 100,000 calling them. So that goes a long way. So what we're going to do now is also, if you want to know anything else, what else you can do, I'll be hanging around after this. But we want to also, like I said, get these talking points in order. The numbers here show since I-200 passed, minority-owned businesses missed out over $3 billion on contracting. That affects everything. That is why we get gentrified out of our neighborhoods. We can't build our own homes. When we get gentrified to new neighborhoods, we can't build those homes or get those new stores. That affects our education because we can't even fund our own schools because our property value, property taxes are bad. So we have a lot of stuff to work with and show and evidence that shows how I-200 has affected us on all aspects of economics, education, and business. So we need to make sure that we have these messaging tight in order, and we want to get as much input from you folks as possible. We want to put stories behind it, not just the numbers, but also individual stories. People have been put out of business for this. People have missed out on education. We want to hear these stories of the direct effects that this happens. So it is not impossible, and if there is a campaign for this, I'm ready for it. Because me and Stephen here passed the first police reform initiative in the country. This is going to be. I welcome this fight. People behind I-200 also tried to pass a bathroom bill. This has not come from a good place, and we are coming from a good place. So I welcome that fight. And they passed one issue, but they've also lost a lot of issues as well. I have not lost an initiative. So this is going to be prepared for the long fight, but it's a fight I welcome, and we can win this regardless of where it goes. So if anyone got any questions, we can also answer what happened afterwards, because
I just want to say one something. And I'm not going to cut us off at noon, because I think if we need to run over on discussions and hear from you, we should. But before Louise leave, I just wanted to say the Port of Seattle sponsored our breakfast this morning, and we want to thank you.
So, like I said, we can answer any questions, because after that hearing, Sarah and I went around both houses, Senate and the House, spent the rest of the day meeting with legislators, developing a plan, and talking to people about how we got this and helping form this plan. And we did I think Kim and Sarah did a great job. She's also a very fast walker. I had trouble keeping up with her all day. So we're here to answer any other questions. But if you want to know the process, I'll be sending out emails to y'all and giving you hopefully a good, thorough explanation of what our plan is, and make sure we tackle. We want to make it as easy as possible, but also we've got to be prepared for the hard fight in the future too.
One of the things, Real, that I think we ought to be prepared for, because I think Stephanie Bowman was right. What did Billie Holiday say? God bless the child who's got his own. I think that we really ought to start thinking about running our own. Y'all been making all of this money. Don't think I haven't noticed how many contracts you've been getting. All these city contracts, all these billions of dollars. I can count. I see the screen, okay? You've been keeping, if you haven't been banking some of your money, then shame on you. But, John Carlson and those guys are gonna come after you trying to cut all of that off. I know how many of y'all used to come here complaining, I ain't got a dime. Then all of y'all, we ain't got no dime, I ain't got no truck. Bobby Ford, man, I ain't got a dime. Y'all, ain't nobody crying. Don't nobody come here crying no more, Ollie. They come and eat breakfast, but don't nobody be crying like they used to cry, Charles. So I guess business must be good. Well, business must be good. Well, you better get ready, because the reason I'm saying that is, you might want to think about what she said is, run your own initiative. It doesn't cost a whole lot to run your own initiative. Put your own ballot out there. Say your own deal. Explain it. If you believe that this is about fairness and equity, call it fairness and equity. Be the first one to the table. Put your own ballot out there so that yes means yes. Last time that no meant yes, and they confused people. This time you put it out there so that yes means yes. That becomes your deal, and you put it out there. You write your own deal. James Brown said in Funky President. I know some of y'all remember that, some of you don't. You're too young. When he said, be like the mob. If you put up the factory, you'll own the job. If you write your own initiative, then it'll say what you want it to say. You say your own initiative. And we can do that, but it takes money to file your initiative and to run your initiative. Let's think about that, you guys. Let's think about going and getting some of these businesses and some of these contributors and getting behind it. And there are a lot of contributors that will be out there. This whole Black Lives Matter group, because this is what it's about. That is the liberals that we would go after to raise some money for that. but think about whether you want to take her up on what she said, because I don't think that is a bad, as George Bush used to say, I don't think that's a bad strategy. To run your own initiative, and it may come to that, because I do believe they're going to come after you the minute this bill passes. They're going to come after us on this deal. So be thinking about it. Be thinking about it.